The Grizzlies. Jonathan Givony says they're
Right.
trying to move into the lottery
Of course.
of the next week's draft. That's what he reported this morning in his updated mock draft. Do you think the Grizzlies are going to make moves to get higher in next week's draft?
I'm sure they'll try.
I'm sure there's are.
I think as long as Zach Kleiman's the general manager of this team, every year they're probably going to attempt to get in the lottery, right? Like, he's a guy that likes to do stuff on draft night.
What would you be targeting if you're moving up in the lottery? What would you be trying to get?
I'll take Scoot.
No. That's not happening. The way Givony phrased it was in the bottom half of the lottery.
Yeah.
So let's think picks 8 to 14.
No, I mean, it is interesting because the obvious thing that stands out is a wing, right? Like a wing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on wing, I think there's two things you might be looking for. A wing with size. They've been looking for that for years. But now you especially need it because Dillon Brooks is not going to be a part of the franchise under any circumstances, as it was reported. So wing with size, who can shoot and guard his position.
Yep.
Like, good luck. Or a point guard.
Right. It is interesting because, you go back to what Zach said at the exit interviews, and he kind of mentioned maybe we shouldn't have doubled down on youth. And in these past two drafts, they have moved up to take a wing, right? And so it kind of contradicts what he says there. But again, if there's a guy there that they love that is that Dillon Brooks replacement, it makes all the sense in the world.
I don't know if it completely contradicts, because what Zach said is, I thought this was a great part of the exit interviews. I like it when people hold themselves accountable.
For sure.
I like it when people take responsibility for things. I tweeted this last night. Brandon Nimmo dropped the ball last night in the Mets-Yankees game. Just dropped the ball and the winning run scored.
I saw it.
I mean, dude, you're a professional baseball player.
Yeah.
Catch the ball.
Catch it.
And after the game, he stood in front of the cameras and said, "I dropped the ball. There's no excuse for that. I'm a professional baseball player. This is what happens at this level. You make one small mistake that you shouldn't make, and then you lose by a run." I could have, because they were sort of like trying to take him off the hook a little bit. The media, at least one reporter, was saying something like, you could drop a ball in a game where you're down 8 or you're up 8 and it doesn't really matter, or down 5 or up 5 and it doesn't really matter. You can get away with it sometimes. It's just one of those nights where you can't get away with it, huh? And he was like, "I hear you, but I don't care if we're up 8, down 8, up 5, down 1. I can't drop that ball, right? That's my job, to catch that ball. I didn't do my job tonight." I like it when people hold themselves accountable. That's what Zach did at that exit interview. What he said was, looking back on it, when we really doubled down on youth, we replaced Kyle Anderson and DeAnthony Melton with rookies for the most part. We got younger, and it didn't, that with the benefit of hindsight, Zach, I'm paraphrasing here, but more or less suggested that might have been a mistake. And I think what he was actually saying is, I made a mistake. I appreciated that. I like it when people can look in the mirror and say, I should have done this differently. My intentions were good at the time, but looking back on it, I should have done something differently. So I think the point he was making there is, we didn't need to double down on youth then. But as it pertains to this draft, it could just be something as simple as, are we going to pick 25th? Are we going to package the 25th pick with something else or another future first rounder to try to move up 10 spots or 12 spots or 14 spots to get a better prospect from this draft? We're picking in this draft no matter what, but we'd rather select 12th than 25th, something along those lines. So you start looking at people who would be available in that range, again, using Jonathan Givony's report as the baseline, late lottery, bottom half of the lottery. So if you're thinking wings with size, Grady Dick, wings with size who can shoot.
Okay.
Grady Dick out of Kansas, 6'7" wing, shot above 40% from 3. Terrific prospect. I'm higher on him than most, but that would, if you're looking for wings, that's a wing who would probably be available in that range. Taylor Hendricks out of Central Florida, more of a power forward than a wing, but a 6'8" bouncy athlete who can shoot from 3. Needs to be a little better defensively, but most one-and-dones do. But there's another guy who could theoretically be available. Here's a guy I like a lot, Jett Howard out of Michigan. I've always liked him. He was a top, borderline top 40 recruit in the class of 2022 coming out of high school. And yet I remember seeing him at the Iverson Classic 2 years ago. It was out at Bartlett High School. Mm-hmm. It was on CBS Sports Network, and I was on the sideline for that. And, there were multiple former NBA players there. Allen Iverson, J.R. Smith, Steven Jackson, and they would come in like maybe 2 days early, and they'd work out with the guys, run them through drills, all that stuff. And so, like, J.R. Smith doesn't come to the table with any sort of knowledge of 24/7 sports, how they're ranking these players. He's just looking at what he's looking at, right? Who's in the gym and who impresses me. Keontae George was there, who's a top, lottery pick in this draft. Cason Wallace was there, who's going to be a lottery pick in this draft probably. And to a man, when I asked the former NBA players, so who have you been impressed? I'm talking to Steven Jackson. I'm talking to J.R. Smith. So who's impressed you? Hey, when did you get here? Oh, I got here Wednesday. So what you been doing? I worked out with the guys yesterday, worked out with them again on Friday, whatever. So who's impressed? Jett Howard. Every one of them said Jett Howard. This guy wasn't even ranked in the top 40 of his high school class. But take that, set it aside. He was the one they told me is most ready to play in the NBA. This was 2 years ago. So, or maybe a little more than a year ago. Mm-hmm. So when I did my first 2023 mock draft, which published last June, a year in advance, I had Jett Howard in the lottery. And nobody else had him there. But I was just like basing it on what I saw and what I was told by guys who know what it takes to play in the NBA. They were like, he is tall. He's got great positional size. He can really shoot it. He's super skilled, like you would expect the coach's son to be. For people who might be unfamiliar, it's Juwan Howard's son, played at Michigan. So I put him in the lottery a year ago. And now basically everybody has him in the top 20. That's another guy who could be available. He's like 6'8", 6'7", can really shoot it, knows how to play. He had a reputation coming out of high school as maybe difficult to play with, but he was terrific for the most part in his 1 year at Michigan. That's another, wing with size who can really shoot it, who would be available in this